broadcast once more. This is Inside Politics here on KTN News. Kenya has moved to defuse what appears to be a diplomatic tiff with her neighbor, Tanzania. According to the Transport CS, James Macharia, Tanzania has not been exempted from the list of inbound flights allowed to land in Kenya hours after Tanzania President John Magufuli's government blocked KQ flights from landing in Tanzanian airports. Maringa reports on Kenya-Tanzania's strained diplomatic relations amid the coronavirus war.
As Kenya was preparing to resume international flights, Tanzania was on the no-entry list. A few hours later, Tanzania hit back by nullifying approval to land for KQ flights on her airports. Less than 24 hours later, Transport CS James Macharia now says he has held a virtual meeting with his Tanzanian counterpart, and the outcome.
That advisory which was given by Tanzania Civil Aviation Authority yesterday, we believe by the end of the day it will be reversed with regard to the Kenya Airways flights from here to Tanzania.
But this is not the first time that a diplomatic spat has hit these two East African neighboring countries. Just earlier this week, a delegation which was en route to attend President Benjamin Mkappa's funeral was denied landing, but Tanzanian authorities claimed it was due to mechanical problems. Still this year, when the COVID-19 pandemic struck, long-distance truck drivers from Kenya were denied entry into Tanzania in what was seen as an economic battle. In 2017, Tanzania's government left many in shock after banning more than 6,500 live chicks allegedly smuggled from Kenya and blamed lack of proper vaccination. The same year, Tanzania's government auctioned over 1,000 cattle belonging to Kenyan pastoralists who had trespassed into their country, a move that President John Pombe Magufuli supported with no regrets. In August last year, President Magufuli delivered 4 peacocks to President Kenyatta as a sign of brotherhood. While receiving the birds, President Uhuru said the two heads of state would fight anything trying to hinder unity between them. Although the Ministry of Health had said that the move to not allow entry for inbound flights from Tanzania is informed by containment of the coronavirus, President Uhuru Kenyatta, in his 10th COVID-19 pandemic address, had hinted otherwise.
The fact that countries do not report everything that happens in their countries. We are an open society. We tell our story. Our media is free. We do everything we can to tell the facts as they are. There are many other countries that are suffering greater than we are, but don't report, but don't say.
The Kenyan government has held its ground on the criteria used to allow entry of inbound international flights, with Africa yet to hit its COVID-19 peak and several countries easing containment measures. All eyes will now be on how Nairobi and Dar es Salaam will restore the straining diplomatic ties that could undermine the fight against coronavirus in the region. George Maringa, KTN News.
All right, let's try to get into this and analyze it. Mark Bichache, let me begin with you. Kenya and Tanzania are very different in the way they have dealt with this coronavirus pandemic. Tanzania, quite early in its reopening, it didn't really close a lot of operations, but like 2 months ago, they reopened almost everything. But Kenya, we have been quite careful in how we've done this. The president quipping last week saying that there are some countries that have suffered greater losses, but they do not speak about it, seemingly having a dig at Tanzania. And then we saw that Kenyan delegation being turned back before landing in Tanzania while trying to access or trying to go to the funeral of the late President Benjamin Mkappa. Where did this all start, Mark, from where you sit?
Ben, there's a number of issues, both historical and then others are unique to the person of President John Pombe Magufuli. The historical context is this, that the country of Kenya has always been seen by many in Tanzania to be a bit more aggressive and a bit more intensive in how we do things. I remember one time when I was working in Tanzania, we went to a meeting of two different entities and we realized that we were all Kenyans sitting in this boardroom. So there is that historical tension between Kenya and Tanzania, and Kenyans being generally seen as being more economically aggressive than Tanzania. So that's a historical backdrop that you cannot forget. But then there's the uniqueness of President John Pombe Magufuli. And I want to give you an example. When there was Zika virus going all around the world, there was a researcher, a medical researcher, who had the temerity to announce that there was one case of Zika in Tanzania. And let me tell you, the cock did not crow in the morning before she had been summarily dismissed by John Pombe Magufuli. So the denialism of what is wrong in Tanzania is part of Magufuli's agenda and how he's handling the issues. And this is not just about COVID, it's about a lot of diseases. But secondly, you must also remember that Tanzania does not have the healthcare system and capacity that Kenyans have. If you look at the death rates of malaria, syphilis, typhoid, and such diseases in Tanzania, it is quite huge. And therefore, they are not and were never going to be as prepared as we were for COVID, which is why Magufuli famously quipped about the goat testing positive for COVID-19. Now, moving forward, therefore, the reason why Tanzania reacted like it did, it is similar to how it reacted when we had rules around how the truck drivers were going to pass between our borders. The reaction was the same, that we cannot be telling our people that there is no corona, then you try and show that Kenya is taking the corona issue seriously. So this is not really a diplomatic row, as it were. It is simply Magufuli trying to defend his re-election bid, and he is based that on denying corona. If in fact, if stories are to be believed, the people are being buried at midnight in Tanzania, and therefore he is very keen to make sure that the story of COVID and COVID measures is not discussed locally or even on the international stage. And if Tanzanians are locked out of Kenya, then to him it means that we are accepting that there is COVID in Tanzania, and he will not have any of that, and that's why we find ourselves where we are. So it seems diplomatic, but this is simply about Magufuli politics and how he intends to survive through the election that is coming. It's just that simple.
All right. Hezbollah Novila, what is your take?
Well, I would disagree with Mark a little bit, just to begin. There is some element of politics playing in, but I don't think Magufuli seriously depends on coronavirus to win the election. We've had conversations in Tanzania about Magufuli being given the third term before he even got the second term. So there must be something that Magufuli is doing in Tanzania that is endearing him to Tanzanians, you know. And I think we probably need to look at all this from a functional paradigm point of view, that whatever we do here in Kenya that works for us in Kenya does not necessarily have to be what Tanzanians are doing, because they have a structure and then the things that they do function within their structure. And I think having said that, it's also important to trace back, the journey that these two countries took from independence. Tanzania went the Ujamaa way, with President Julius Nyerere, which was a lot more cohesive, brought people together. And then, of course, President Kenyatta had the Harambee philosophy, which was bringing resources together to build a nation, but we were thoroughly capitalistic, And I think that gave Kenyans a trajectory that put Kenya ahead of Tanzania. And, by default, Kenya has become the big boy in this region. There are a number of things that have happened to Kenya in the recent past since President Kenyatta became the president, that we've gained this global prominence, and we are part of the U.S. Security, non-permanent members of the U.S. Security Council, and then you have the free trade agreement setting in. And with all these opportunities and the prominence that Kenya has, I think Kenya has a greater responsibility. And even if you have a petulant brother around, the neighborhood, the onus is on you as a bigger brother to find a way to accommodate, And to a large extent, I think our president and our government has done a lot. Even in this diplomatic spat occasioned by COVID, you look at the responses from our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it's actually reaching out to Tanzania in a big way. But we cannot also run away from the fact that the way Tanzanians have handled Corona raises serious issues that must be attended to. So when Tanzania responded by saying that they're also stopping KQ because they are not among the list of countries that are allowed into this country after we opened our airspace, I think that response, first of all, was not meant for the public. That was a letter that a director was sending. And the fact that the digital media has given us access to that should not make us think that this is a diplomatic row that is out of proportion, because there are mechanisms to deal with that. And I think the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is dealing with that. But as Kenyans, there are fundamental questions we need to ask ourselves. That do we want a government that is protecting us? And if we want a government that is protecting us, I think the measure that Kenya took in stopping Tanzanians from coming through our airspace is a prudent measure. I don't think there's any other country that's allowed Tanzania, given what is going on in Tanzania. But even in doing that, are there specific things and protocols that we can enforce to ensure that, irrespective of what they're doing with Corona in Tanzania, we can still have our trade and bilateral agreements going on? And this should be informed by a number of things. What are the export value that we are talking about as a country going to Tanzania? What are the import value that we're talking about as Kenyans coming from Tanzania? What are the investments that we have in Tanzania, and what are the investments that Tanzanians have in Kenya? And to what extent can we have a framework that ensures that when our airspaces are opened, we don't disenfranchise these investments, both in Kenya and Tanzania, by citizens from the two countries? So these are conversations that should be held. But of critical significance is to respect countries that have taken different structures that are working within their borders. Respect that, but ensure that you also protect your people.
All right.
From where I see it, our government is handling that.
Okay. Dismas, do you agree with Dismas? So Kenya has a right to deal with Tanzania in the way it has because of Tanzania's way of doing things concerning COVID-19. But so Tanzania did say they banned the national carrier KQ's flights from entering into Tanzania on a reciprocal basis. Do they also have a right to do that, even though Kenya has been, quite to the book and very careful, and now it has dealt with the coronavirus pandemic?
It's interesting that every country has got a responsibility to pursue their own national and public interest. But the Kenya and Tanzania scenario is very interesting. And our tiff with Tanzania started way before all of us on this show were born. It started in 1963 when President Kenyatta decided that Kenya is going to be a pure capitalist state, and we are just going to pursue capitalism to the hilt, while Nyerere, his counterpart in Tanzania, said that we're going to pursue socialism or ujamaa. And you recall the disagreements between the two presidents are the ones which led to the collapse of the first East African community. And you even remember there's a place in Kenya called a community. Those were the headquarters. And Kenya was accused of taking possession of a number of assets in a manner which our neighbors considered to be irregular and unfair. And there were assets like planes and that. So our relationship with Tanzania has been very, very rocky, to the extent that President Kenyatta created time to go and visit Pombe Magufuli at his...
Right, we're having a problem that connection to Dismas. Let me come back to Mark Bichachi. So what's the solution here? It seems, looking at it from outside, it seems rather childish from the two countries. What is the way forward here?
The way forward.
Go to a restaurant, they'll just flick and say they want to make orders without taking into active consideration that they need to be polite. So as a nation, we must remain...
All right, Mark, we seem to have gotten Dismas back. He had disappeared. Dismas, can you hear me?
For interest.
Dismas? It seems we do not have Dismas's audio. We'll try to reconnect with him. We are having trouble with our Zoom connection, of course, for our guests. Mark, if you can hear me, please go ahead.
Ben, the truth of the matter is Kenya has to learn to deal with a Magufuli presidency at least for another 5 years, simply because Magufuli seems to be winning this thing, and his game is the same. He's the total man. Let me use that term because Kenyans will understand what I mean. He has a total man approach to Tanzanian politics, and Kenya has to learn to play his game, or Kenya needs to decide to use its significant diplomatic muscle to try and find a way to bring him to heel, which I don't think is possible. He's too tough-headed to basically change his mind on any of these issues. So as Dismas says, these issues are historical and they're quite emotional for Tanzanians, if I'm honest. But Kenya just has to accept that that's who is on the other side of that particular debate, and we have to learn to cope and deal with him. He's not changing, and I don't think any form of diplomatic action is going to change him. He is who he is, and that's how he is. In fact, we should borrow a leaf from how he's handled the chairmanship of SADC, and how he even refused to appear for some COVID meetings for that particular regional body. So we're dealing with a very difficult man, and we must accept that.
All right. Let's go back to Dismas to have the final say on this. Dismas, you were giving us the historical background of this tiff between Kenya and Tanzania. You can finish telling us about that, and also what is the way forward from where you sit? Dismas, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, what is the way forward on this row between the two East African nations?
Well, in my view, what we need to do as a nation, and President Kenyatta has got a responsibility, because we are the principal losers in this entire arrangement if we don't play our ball right. Like, for instance, if you go to statistics, in 2017, our imports were valued at 23 billion, while our exports were valued at 23.7 billion to Tanzania. And you know, we cannot choose our neighbors, just the way you cannot choose your brothers and sisters. So we must play in a manner that we manage the fears in Dar es Salaam. And I think it's incumbent on President Kenyatta. Maybe it's time for him to invite back, to invite Magufuli to come to his Kiambu home so that they can celebrate a beginning. Because if we don't behave like the bigger brother in the region, we are going to lose. Our trade has been going down every single year. And wherever Kenya has wanted to do anything in Tanzania, it's been put to an abrupt stop. You may recall that one of the media houses wanted to invest in Tanzania, but when we posted human resource from Kenya, they were told to come back. Even a giant mobile telephone company, a Kenyan, was supposed to take over the leadership of the organization, but Dar es Salaam said they gave us a polite but firm no. So it's incumbent on us as Nairobi to manage the fears of all our neighbors, not just Tanzania. We must manage the fears of our neighbors in Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi, because at the end of the day, we stand to lose. For instance, if the tiff between Tanzania escalates any higher, then the cost of food in Kenya is going to become very high. We get most of our foods from Tanzania, and then at the same time, we sell our industrial goods in Tanzania. So we cannot afford to be rude and arrogant. And, you know, typically, because I've done a number of conferences across the region, that's the continuous feedback you are given every day, that Kenyans are rude and arrogant, and our neighbors fear us for that purpose.
All right. And Hesbon, is this purely a messaging issue that Kenya has to deal with?
Well, I think it's not really a messaging issue, but it's a new media environment issue that any response that is not meant for the public will eventually end up in the public domain, and the public will make a big fuss out of it. But I like the way it has been handled, that right now KQ can land can land in Tanzania. However, I think going forward, it's important to realize that these two countries need each other. With the trade agreements that Kenya has signed, with the big market that Tanzania has through SADC, Kenya actually needs a thriving Tanzania, because Tanzania is one of our markets. But then it might not be as big a market as the European markets that we have. But the critical thing is, in post-COVID era, if there is any era like that, you realize that we are going to look across at the periphery countries that are neighboring us more than we're going to look at the center nations that are far withdrawn from us. And therefore, there's just that need to have stronger bilateral relationships across the East African region and across Africa. And because Kenya is well poised to tap into this market, Kenya has a bigger responsibility to be a bigger brother to some of these countries. And it can only best, be anchored in the relationship that we have with the East African nation. And Tanzania being the biggest, the onus is on us to find a way out.
Right. I said with the...
Ben, I think for a nation like Kenya,
yes,
when we are posting ambassadors or high commissioners to our neighbors, we should be sending heavyweights as our ambassadors and high commissioners to the neighborhoods, because Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi, in my view, are the most important diplomatic postings. So we should have ambassadors and high commissioners who are able to see the four corners in a room, who can join the dots, who are able to nip all these issues in the bud. So that when President Kenyatta is seated in Nairobi and
Thanks for that. We apologize for the break in the picture and sound of Dismas Mokua there. We're trying to have our conversations and discussions here on KTN News in the safest way possible, making sure the biggest social distancing rules possible, and that has its technological challenges. Let's take a quick commercial break here on Inside Politics. We're back for one final stretch where we'll come to finalize on our issues. We'll be giving you as well a chance to talk to us, your views, questions, and comments. Be sure to call in. Our studio lines will be scrolling at the bottom end of your screen. Tell us what you think about that tweet by former Commissioner of the IEBC, Dr. Roslyn Akombe. What do you think about the formula for sharing revenue and how that is affecting Kenyan politics? And of course, your thoughts on the Kenya-Tanzania row. Stay with us.